Hello and welcome back to the channel. On today's tutorial, I'm going to be sharing with you how to draft an asymmetric blouse for a waist snatch inbuilt corset. So if it's your first time viewing my channel, please hit on the subscribe button. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. So let's dive right into today's video. So now I've gone ahead to mark out all my basic measurement, which includes my shoulder to bust, shoulder to under bust, shoulder to waistline, and for the top length of this blouse I'm using 22 inches, and for the neckline I'm making use of 3 by 3 inches. So if you're a much taller person, you're going to be using 24 to 26 inches. This is an inbuilt corset, so that is going to be holding your waistline and the lower part of your abdomen to hold it in. That is the essence of an inbuilt corset. So now I'm going to be marking my shoulder divided by 2. My shoulder divided by 2 is 7, and I'll be adding half, making it 7.5, and from that 7.5 point I'm going to come down by 1 inch, and I'll be drawing my shoulder slope. So next I will be marking my chest line. To get your chest line is your bust circumference divided by 6 plus 1.5 inches. So mine is 7 inches. So I'll measure what I have at the shoulder, which is 7.5 inches, and I will mark. This is just to get a straight line for my armhole. And at this point I'm going to go ahead to measure what I have from my bust down to my chest line, which is about 1 inch, and I'm going to make a mark at that point. After I'm done doing that, the next step is to go ahead to label, and I'll go ahead to divide my armhole circumference into 2 by folding my tape. I'll go in by half at that point, and here I'll mark my bust circumference divided by 6, and after that I'm going to be placing my armhole curve, connect from my bust circumference to the ½ inch and to the upper part of my shoulder. And after I'm done doing that, I'm just going to go ahead and I will connect or mark it all out. The next step you want to take is to go ahead to mark your nipple to nipple divided by 2. So my nipple to nipple is 7 inches divided by 2. I have 3.5 inches. So I'm going to be making a mark at that point. It will serve as a guide to draw out a straight line. Now from my chest line, I'm going to connect from the chest line to the bust, from the under bust down to the waistline, and from the waistline down to the top length. After I'm done doing this, I'm going to divide my shoulder into 2, and I'm going to connect from that point down to the lower part this way of my chest line. So this is what I have, and the next step I'll go ahead to mark my dart intake. So I'll be marking 1 inch at both sides of my under bust and at my waist. So coming down to the hip point, I'll be drawing a slanted dart or a diamond dart at that point. So I'll connect from my waist down to my under bust and slant my ruler this way to connect, and also do that for the other part. So for a plus size, you can go ahead to use more dart intake of 1.5 inches. So now I'm going to go ahead and use my marker, and I'm going to connect to make this more visible for you to see. So after I'm done doing this, the next step you want to take is to use a French curve to connect from your bust down to your under bust this way, and you're going to also do this to the other part. So this is what I have, and I'm going to go ahead to outline it with my marker. So next, I'm going to get my tape, and I'll place and mark 1.5 inches above my chest line, and I'm going to go ahead to rule out a line. Now I'm going to be marking a 1 inch dart intake at this point. For a plus size, you can use 1.5 or more. Now I'm going to connect this part. So after connecting it, I'm not going to outline it because we're going to actually alter this when we are trying to create the yoke of this pattern. So now I'm going to place my tape, and I'm going to mark my bust circumference divided by 4 mark. Measure these 2 inches dart intake, and I'll be adding ½ inch. So I'm not actually sewing this, but if you want to sew yours, you can add more sewing allowance or still use ½ inch since it's an inbuilt corset. Go ahead to mark my under bust circumference, measure the dart intake, and mark my sewing allowance of ½ inch. So now this is a waist snatch blouse for an inbuilt corset. So there are two ways to go about the waist snatching. You can go ahead and minus whatever you want now. Let's say my waist circumference is 28 and I want to take out 3 inches from it. I'm going to be doing 28 minus 3. I'll be having 25. So that 25 divided by 4, I have 6.5. So I'll be marking my waist circumference as 6.5. So that's the easiest way of snatching your waist, and that is also okay for a beginner. But in this particular pattern, I'm going to be adding another dart. So I'll go ahead and mark my original waistline divided by 4, add my dart intake that I took out, and I'll be adding my sewing allowance. At the hip point, I'm going to be marking my hip circumference divided by 4, and I'll go ahead to add ½ inch for my sewing allowance. So now I'm going to connect from the chest line down to the bust this way, and from that point I'll connect to the under bust and I'll connect to the waistline. After connecting to the waist, I'm going to place my French curve and I'm going to connect from my hip down to my waistline. So if your shape is not looking like this, that is not a problem. Everybody's shape is different. So I'm just going to go ahead and I will outline my pattern this way. So the next step I'm going to take is to insert my darts, my bust dart. I'm going to measure 1.5. So everybody's own varies. The difference between your front and your back, mine is actually 1.5, and I'll be using 1.5 inches at this point. So I'll go ahead to mark it out so that it's going to be very visible. So next, I will be creating another dart intake. This is to help me snatch the waistline. So I explained the other method while we were marking out our waist circumference. Now I'll be using this particular method for this pattern. So I'll rule out a line, divide what I have here into 2. So now we are trying to take out 3 inches from our waist. What we are going to do, our initial waistline, which is 28, my normal waistline is 28, and I'll be minusing 3 inches from it. After minusing 3 inches, I have 25 inches. So now what I'll go ahead and do is my old circumference, my old waist circumference, which is 28 divided by 4, I have 7 inches. Now my new waistline, which is 25, I'll do 25 divided by 4, which gives me 6.25. So what I'll do next is 7 inches minus 6.25, I'll be having 0.75. So now that's 0.75. I will divide 0.75 into 2. Like I'll get 0.75 and I will divide it into 2. So whatever I have, I'll mark it on one side of my pattern and mark the other remaining 0.75 at the other side. So by the time we snatch out 0.75 on one side of the front, snatch out 0.75 on the other side of the front, we have 1.5 inches. At the back also, we are going to repeat this. We'll be snatching out 0.75 at the right side of the back pattern, and on the left side, we are going to be snatching another 0.75. So by the time you add this all together, 0.75 into 4 places, you're going to be having 3 inches. So with that way, you have successfully snatched out 3 inches from your waistline. But if you find this pattern very difficult, you can use the first method which I explained, which is your waist circumference minus whatever you want to snatch out. Like you want to take out 3 inches from your waistline, that's 28 minus 3, you're going to have 25. Go ahead and divide the 25, and whatever you have, you're going to be marking it as your waist circumference, and then add your sewing allowance. So now I'll just go ahead and I will just cut out this pattern before we go ahead and continue drafting. So from the top length, I'll go up by 2 inches and I'll go ahead to place my French curve and connect. So if you have any question concerning this pattern, please leave your question at the comment section. And if you haven't yet subscribed, please hit on the subscribe button. So now whatever I have on this side, I'll go ahead and I will trace it out. You can go ahead to use your tracing wheel, or if your pattern is a bit light, you can just see it out and trace it. So when I was actually tracing it, I didn't know that some part of the videos were not recording. So I'll go ahead and I will continue tracing out my pattern from what I have previous, and make sure that your pattern rhymes. If not, you're going to have a different bust or that intake from the other side. So after I'm done marking it, all I'm going to do is just to go ahead to take my marker, and I'm going to label or mark it all out so that it will be visible and not too confusing when I'm actually drafting my or altering the pattern. So after this, I'll go ahead and spread my pattern, and this line at the middle, I'm going to draw a fence line at that point because we'll be making reference to that. So now the next step I'm going to take is just to go ahead to draw out my cup at this part. So I'm going to mark my nipple to nipple divided by 2, and I'll be adding ½ inch. For a plus size person, you can add 1 inch to accommodate your bust. This is the same thing as dividing what you have between your armhole and your bust circumference also. So you're going to have almost the same result, which will still work out. So after marking my nipple to nipple is 3.5 plus half, I have 4 inches. So I'm going to take my French curve and I'm going to place and connect. So after connecting on this side, this is what I have. So I'll go ahead and also repeat the same process on this side, mark, and I will connect. After connecting, the next step is just to go ahead to use my marker, and I'm going to draw it out this way. Another way to do this is just to connect your cups and then trace it out before you open up your pattern. So now the next thing you want to do is to blend in your dart to draw your cup. So we've started working on the cup styling of this pattern. So if you blend it out this way, you can go ahead to use your freehand sketch or your French curve. So I'm just going to connect this way, and this is what I have. So looking at it, I had to go ahead to blend it up a little and take the part going to the armhole up a little. If not, it's going to change the yoke styling of this dress. So after I'm done doing that, I'm going to place my French cuff, connect from that point down to my under bust. So by the time you blend in the dart that you have there, it's going to give that slanty look, and I'll go ahead to outline my pattern. So after that, I'll just blend it in a little, and we'll go ahead to work on the other side of the cup. So from the center, I will be going out by ½ inch, and from my chest line, I'll be going up by 1 inch, because if you're looking at it, you notice that it's a little lower than what we have on the other side. So from there, I'm just going to place my ruler and I'll draw out, because you notice that there also is a little pointy, and I'll place my French curve and I'll connect. So I've achieved the cup for this side. Moving ahead, I'm just going to use a free hand to blend it to this part this way. So after that, we are done drawing out the cup of the two sides, and I'll go ahead to draw it out. So while looking at it, if you blend in the dart, you will notice the cup will come together and give that shape you have at the upper part. So now I'm done drawing this out, and the next thing we are going to do is to go ahead to achieve the deep neckline yoke that we have in this dress. So from here, I'll be marking ½ inch, and at this point I'll be using a free hand to get this. So I'll just look at what I have here and I'll blend in my dart at this point. So not really knowing what went down there, I'm just going to assume that the curve went right down to the lower part of the pattern. For the other side, I'm going to place and I'll mark 1 inch and I'll connect it upwards. So now I'm just going to go ahead to also blend in my dart at this point to get that shape we have at the yoke part of this dress. Blend in your darts, and you're just going to go ahead to trace out that shape, and I'll connect it to the lower point this way. So the essence of blending in your dart is so that when you join your pattern, it's going to be the same. You're going to achieve, or it's going to meet at that point. I don't know if you understand, but by the time you blend in your dart, that line will be meeting the other line. So now we are going to take care of our bust dart intake. So with that, I'm just going to cut out the bust part this way, and I'm going to blend it in order to make sure that the line meets. I'm going to open it up very well. Now I'll go ahead and I'll blend up my dart, use my sellotape to hold it down. So after blending it down, if your cup doesn't match very well, go ahead and blend it out. So now on the other part, I'll still be repeating the same process. I'm going to open up the dart this way, and I'm going to be blending it in also. So at the sides of your corset, if you have anything poking out or not blending, just go ahead to blend it, and I'll go ahead to label my pattern so that I won't get confused. So if you notice, I have number 3 into 2 places. Why I did that is because that number 3 is a bit small, and I'll be merging it up with the number 4 on that side. So now I'll go ahead and cut my pattern, and for now I'll just go ahead to get rid of the darts so that you understand. And at this point, you're going to blend in your dart or you're going to cut it out. Either ways that work for you. So I'll open up the dart so that it will be easier for you to blend it. If not, I might not really get the shape that I desire. So I'll go ahead and cut out the darts at this point, and I'm going to be blending it in, and I'll use my tape to hold it down. After holding it down, I'm just going to go ahead to continue cutting my pattern. So this is the yoke part of this dress. As you can see, it is really coming out very well. But if you have any question, any part of this video that you don't understand, please do well to leave your question at the comment section. So now, just like I said, I'll be merging that number 3, the second number 3, to the number 4. This is just to make it easier for me to join this pattern if you're actually sewing this. So just like I said, it's a requested video on how to draft this, and I'm just going to go ahead to cut out the remaining part of my dress. So after cutting this out, we'll be heading over to cut the back pattern of this dress, which is a lot easier than the front. So after cutting, when you're stitching up your pattern, that is when you're going to determine the type of basque. For this dress, we have a center basque. So you'll be using your inbuilt corset to create that, or any basque style of your choice. So after I'm done cutting out, this is what my front pattern looks like. And with that, we'll be heading over to the back pattern. So I've marked out all my measurements for the back pattern. I marked my shoulder to bust, and in this pattern you notice we don't have a waistline, which is also okay. And I marked my shoulder to waist, and the back length of this dress is about 20.5 inches. Remember, our front length is 22 inches. My bust dart is 1.5 inches. So minusing 22 from 22 minus 1.5, I'll be having 20.5. So the next thing I will do is to mark my dart intake, and to do that, I'm going to mark my nipple to nipple divided by 2. My nipple to nipple is 7 divided by 2. I have 3.5 inches. So I'll go ahead and mark it at the lower part, and after that I'll be ruling a straight line connecting from the bust down to the top length. After I'm done doing that, the next step is to go ahead to mark my dart intake. I'll be marking 1/2 inch at both sides of the back, and after I'm done doing that, I'll go ahead to connect it upwards this way. And I will also place my ruler and connect to the lower part. So after I'm done connecting, I'm going to go ahead to insert all my body circumference. At the bust, I will mark my bust circumference divided by 4, measure the dart intake. At the waist, I will mark the waist circumference divided by 4. Mark the sewing allowance and also my dart intake, the dart intake I took out from here. Mark my hip circumference at the top length and add 1/2 inch for sewing allowance. So I'm now going to connect from the bust down to the waistline, and from the waistline down to the hip point. So after doing that, remember at the front part we went up by 2 inches, and I'll go ahead to go up by 2 inches, and I'll place and I will connect. So after I'm done connecting, I'm going to mark it out. So I'll be creating another dart for this pattern. Remember, we are trying to snatch our waistline, but before that I'll mark out my chest line, which will serve as a guide to draw the upper part of my yoke. I'll go down by 1 inch from my neckline and I'll connect to my dart intake at the lower part. So now I'll label this as yoke, and I'll go ahead and create another dart intake. Go ahead and divide this, and I will rule a line at that point. So remember, we marked 0.75 divided by 2 at that pattern in front. We're going to go ahead to repeat it at the back. So go ahead and divide 0.75 and mark and connect. So you don't need to calculate again because you already know what you used in front. So after I'm done doing this, the next step is just to go ahead to create the lacing bar area of this dress. So at the upper part, I marked 2 inches. Coming down here at the waistline, I'll mark 1.5 and I'll go ahead to mark 1. So why I'm doing this, I don't want to have a straight back. I just want to have something a little slanty. You can just use 2 inches, 1.5 inches, 1 inch straight if you don't want to have a slanty look at the back. So I'll just make these points to indicate the lacing bar. And after that, I'll mark 0.25 inches. This is to get rid of the bulginess at the yoke part. And after this, all I'm going to do is just to go ahead to cut out my pattern. So if you find this tutorial very interesting and educative, and at this point you haven't yet subscribed, please hit on the subscribe button. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and join us in our next video. So I'll just go ahead and label this as 1, 2, and 3, and I'm going to cut out. If you have any question, please leave at the comment section. So after I'm done cutting out my pattern, this is what I have, and with this we have come to the end of today's video. Join us in our next video, and if you haven't yet subscribed, please hit on the subscribe button. Thank you for watching to the end.